This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, Chad and Stephanie, I don't know if you have any ability to do this or not, but wherever the microphone is coming from, can it be moved closer? Or can you guys move closer to the microphone?
I'll work on that for the next board meeting. As of right now, we're just gonna have to really project. The microphone
Okay,
is
that'd be
on the camera at the front of the room, so that's why we kind of a lot of it shifted up this way, the ones that are gonna be talking.
okay.
Hopefully this is an okay volume.
Is your volume up? It's up as high as it goes, yeah.
Are we ready to start? I believe so.
A lot of us are remoting in today.
Yeah.
Turn it at 90.
The time is 9:04. We're here for our quarterly meeting, and we'll call the order and verify the quorum.
Rick?
Present.
Brian?
Here.
Here.
Julie?
Julie's muted.
Here, I'm here.
Eric?
Here.
Corey?
Here.
And Annie? Here.
We have and this is time for any public input. Do we have any members of the public here?
I believe we do. A couple.
Uh,
They don't need to identify themselves
Oh,
unless they want to
okay.
testify though.
So we have would you like to have any input from the public members?
Oh, it looks like.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Scott DiBiasio with the Appraisal Institute. Don't have any input at this point. However, I am very interested in the discussion on the PREA-related rulemaking process. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'll look forward to that discussion.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I see Justin here in the corner with his hand up.
Yes, Justin.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me fine?
We can hear you, Justin.
All right, good. First, I'm excited to be here. I look forward to being able to join some of these meetings in the future as well. I like the ability to remote in. It makes it quite convenient. I wanted to just kind of take a moment to address a couple things, kind of just throw these ideas out here, and hopefully we can move forward in a way that we can provide some good quality ideas and changes to our profession and make it a lot more beneficial for all parties involved. One of the things I really wanted to talk about today was to introduce some ideas about considering additional AMC regulations. I know that there are certain things that you guys can look at now, and maybe in the future we could consider some others. So I wanted to definitely start broaching this topic. The first one being really, given the economic time that we're in now, there is definitely an opportunity for capitalists to come in and kind of take over things. So we've had a lot of consolidation with different AMCs. We've seen a lot of consolidation too with some larger appraisal companies. And this is something that I'm experiencing, so I want to bring that up to your attention because not everybody is in the field every day and interacting with different clients and things like that. So with that in mind, I definitely think that appraisal fees and turn times are being used in a way to kind of consolidate market share and also influence, the who gets the assignments of what type of appraisals. And we all have been down this road, I'm sure, where appraisers are like, well, the fees are not reasonable, customary. How do we look into that? Do we have any issues with the ability to set what fees are, things like that? And that's totally understandable because we can't necessarily set a fee, but there are, federal law that states what is considered compliance with customary reasonable fees. And I think that's something that maybe we could look at and take into consideration in light of, are they following with the requirements of like Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z, Are they adhering to the process that is laid out and how they arrive to that? And I think that is something that's very much in the purview of the board, and as the only people that are kind of responsible for ensuring AMCs are adhering to these things. I mean, this is one of the big ideas that I wanted to bring up as a topic of discussion, is how do we, ensure that the AMCs are in compliance with those standards, number one. And then as that comes, as we segue into that, I think this is also going to give us, when we look at solutions that are very simple to introduce, with that, I believe that there's also going to be other things that come to light. And I know there has been some recent news, and I've seen Fannie Mae has passed around I would guess it's like a notification brochure kind of thing. It's been circulating around, and they did that in the beginning of the year, this year, and it's specifically addressing, it's come to their attention of, fake appraisers, fake appraisals, and appraisal fraud in that degree, right? And I think I'm extremely shocked by this. I'm not shocked that it's happening, but I'm shocked that finally somebody is paying attention to this. And how do we also ensure that that is something that is not going on within the state of Oregon, right? And I think from my understanding now, just looking over the laws of which you guys have listed down for what you expect of an appraisal management company, maybe we should look at some better ideas, or to include certain things when it comes to the renewal of licenses for an AMC, or as part of what someone maybe could file a complaint against. And with this in mind, I specifically have an issue with the data protection that AMCs have. They access every bit. They require me to provide background checks, copies of my driver's licenses. They see all appraisals that come across, that you deliver to them. They sit in a very unique position for some bad actor who works through an AMC to tap into that information, sell it off, or create another account, things like that. I have ran into, as a practicing individual in this industry, dealing with AMCs, they are not very picky about who they decide to hire. And when that happens, we run into a scenario where we have insider threat type problems going on, where an AMC hires somebody with not necessarily to the highest level of professional standards and integrity and things, and they have access to quite sensitive information, and they have the means to be able to steal your data and do that. I've also been personally victimized by identity theft. I'm sure that you're aware that the appraisal subcommittee's website was compromised. I got a personal notification that my information was part of that. Also, same thing with the licensing departments within the states. So state of Washington, state of Oregon. So this is an issue that's going on. How we solve it is definitely something that I think nobody really has the perfect answer. But I believe that right now is the time to start looking at how to we move forward in trying to assure that we protect the public's trust. The appraisers that show up are the appraisers. The people who are completing the appraisals, signing those appraisals, that's the legitimate appraiser, and these orders are being, fulfilled by those appraisers. And I think that this is why I wanted to bring up the AMC regulation specifically, because I think they sit in a very unique position that the board could decide to set some types of standards with, and that could really heavily influence a lot of positive change, to where you guys could easily start tracking some of that stuff in a little bit better of a way. So I'm not sure right now, but my understanding is there's not a whole lot that's required for them to keep as records and show, what type of appraisals were ordered, who completed the appraisal. And I think maybe that's about as far as it goes. They don't track fees, like what fee was paid. They don't track when it was paid or who it was paid to. those types of issues, right? So there's a lot of very simple kind of record keeping requirements and the scope of which an audit or in order to renew your license that maybe the board could consider requiring. And that would, I really believe, go very far in trying to solve an issue like this. And so that's really what I had to say about those things. So I appreciate your time with that. And in light of this meeting, I will continue to try to give some types of input and just start rolling down the line, and maybe hopefully something gets picked up, and some positive change occurs. Also, I think I have another issue that I wanted to just throw out there. Appraisers right now are concerned with the new standards with zoning and how do they comply within their licenses. And I know that there has been some recent publications by Fannie Mae as well. I've spoken with Chad about it a couple times, and I think that if there any kind of additional guidance or information that could be put out there, maybe on your guys' website or something, that would go very far to help explain what, where your position is, and then really how an appraiser should determine whether or not this stuff is within their scope of licensure or not. And I think there's going to be an issue that we're going to face a lot in the near future, and as we continue to grow, multiple jurisdictions in multiple states across the country are adopting these things, and they're doing it so fast they're not paying attention to what's going on with the lending standards, or what's required for an appraiser, what's required within federal lending transactions, what's considered a single family type of loan standards, things like that. They're kind of not matching right now, and any kind of input and feedback that we can start providing and getting out there, not only will it help assure all appraisers are clear with what they can do, I think that'll also go really far in trying to make sure that in the future we can kind of make these things all fit together. And so that's the other issue that I wanted to discuss here today and give my feedback. So I really appreciate you guys for time, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you, Justin. That you've given us some things to think about, and my office manager just showed up. My underboss boss, member of the public. Any other public comments that you'd like to make today? Okay.
Before we move on, right?
No, that's it
Real
for me.
quick point of order here. After we called the meeting to order and verified quorum, we did not announce the staff present. Currently, staff present today, for the record, we have myself, Chad Cook. We have Administrative Specialist Stephanie Perkins and Budget Manager Paul Lindsay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. And also attending by phone, we have our DOJ counsel, Raul Ramirez.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
And we are up for adoption of the January 22nd, 2024 board meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to adopt those minutes?
So moved.
I saw, I don't know if this matters, but there's a typo on page 2. Do you guys care about that?
Typo in the minutes?
Yeah, there's a typo in the minutes. It's page 2, paragraph 2, the enforcement report. It says ROM and it should say from.
Got it. We can correct that. That would be a typographical error. We can adopt with that correction.
Okay.
Okay.
Shall we vote on that again?
Sure.
Motion to adopt that with the correction, so noted.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie. Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next order of business is to repeal the ACLB special record retention schedule. Any discussion on that? Be on page 5 of your agenda. Okay, do we have a motion to repeal that?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next order of business is the election of board officers, chair and vice chair. Do we have any volunteers? Anybody like to make a motion for those positions?
I'd like to make a,
Folks attending remotely, can you hear okay from the front of the room?
a little bit. Yeah, we're having a little trouble, but I would like to make a motion if I may.
Please do.
Okay, I move to appoint Jeff Uphold as chair, the Oregon Appraiser Certification and Licensure Board.
Do we have a
Jeff,
second?
are you uncomfortable with that?
Totally fine. Thank you for your confidence.
Do we have a second?
I don't say it myself.
I'll second.
Well, you can vote aye.
Annie second.
Okay, so,
Okay, Rick,
yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
That is unanimous. Congratulations, Jeff.
All right.
Do we have any motions for vice chair or nominations?
Who's hanging around? What we got going on here? These two.
Eric is out, these two are out.
We've timed out.
You are the old timer now.
I'm the old timer now? Wow.
I nominate Lori to be vice chair.
I second.
I third that.
So that was
Go ahead.
Brian with the motion
Yes.
and Rick with the second? Okay. Rick,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
And that is how quickly you get up to the deep end of the pool.
You guys don't waste any time.
Is that's anonymous, I would think.
And that appears to be anonymous.
Congratulations.
Come on, guys, go.
Okay, new business. Proposed rulemaking, OAR, Chapter 161, Division 002, 010, 015, 020, 025, and 050.
If you don't mind, Rick, I'd like to give a little context for that.
If you would, please.
Just a quick point of context for this first set of rules. These are amendments to existing rules. They are not new rules. They're essentially alignments with the ACLB criteria and other requirements that are coming down the pike here in 2026. So this would be a motion to amend existing rules with the text as written.
Gotcha.
A motion to begin the rulemaking process. Sorry.
Right. So motion, sorry, I got fine print here. Approve the filing of notice of proposed rulemaking to amend OAR Chapter 161, Divisions 002, 010, 015, 020, 025, and 050 for consistency with changes to the real property appraiser qualifications criteria issued by the Appraiser Qualifications Board. Do we have that motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes anonymously. And Chad, would you give us some context on this next rulemaking?
Okay, so the next agenda item are new rules. These are what we've essentially been building up to with the amendments over the last, since June of last year. The second set of rules is PAREA. That is essentially the set of administrative rules that allow PAREA to satisfy the state licensed and certified residential experience requirements for licensure. Now that would be to expose the rules to the public, begin the rulemaking process. process. This is not to adopt the rules themselves. It's to begin the exposure process and public comment.
Well, we're looking forward to that.
I have a question, might be not entirely related, but where would a appraiser learn about the Oregon specific rules?
In terms of our administrative rules, that is available on our website. We actually have up in the top right-hand corner, there's a little section called Quick Links. And a couple of those items, well, one of them relates to the criteria. I believe there's a link to the appraisal subcommittee, but there's also a link directly to all of the administrative rules for the agency. That would be OAR Chapter 161. And then there's also a complete listing of the statutory authority of the board, which is ORS 674. So that statutory section has the grounds for discipline, the board's authority, it's got the AMC regulations in it. That is state law. The administrative rules are what tell the board and appraisers how state law is applied. So the administrative rules as far as scope of practice, licensing requirements, education requirements, things like that, those would all be in OAR Chapter 160.
And it's up to the appraiser to know this information on their own, because it's probably classes locally that I've taken a few times. And then, so if people are taking these classes more, the national programs or free, they're not locally focused.
Right.
It seems like the appraiser might not be aware of these rules. So at what point do they become, when they get a license, that they encouraged to review all that, or?
As just kind of a general point of advice, I always talk to new licensees whenever possible and point them to that section. In fact, whenever I talk to an appraiser, period, whether it's over the phone with a question, a new licensee going through an audit, anybody applying to be a supervisor that we're doing an interview on, that's the immediate topic that comes up. Is, hey, just so you're aware here, but other than that organic grassroots word of mouth, we don't have anything other than the rules themselves require you to know the rules, right? We're giving you a license, you're saying I'm competent in this state to perform appraisal and I understand what I'm supposed to do. Part of that is those rules and the administrative rules and the laws, but beyond that, yeah, I agree with you. That's not a class that's out there, and because it's so specific to the agency, I'm just encouraging everybody to read those, be aware of the scope of practice limitations, and that's essentially how we're hoping to deal with that. But yeah, those rules are critical to understanding appraisal in Oregon.
Dad, may I add something?
Yes.
So I'm not suggesting that we do this. I'm not at all recommending it, but I'm licensed in 2 states where I had to test on the administrative rules in those states. It was Wisconsin and Michigan. In order to be a licensed or certified appraiser in that state, you have to pass a test on their administrative rules. Anyway, like I say, I'm not recommending we do that, but at least it would make appraisers aware in our state of how to navigate them. So I'll be quiet now.
Thanks, Laurie. So the other question I have is, how do the proposed rules for PREA compare to neighboring states?
As far as what is before you folks today, this is full adoption of PREA. The proposal is adoption of PREA as written. So based on some feedback that I've had with the chair of the AQB and some other stakeholders and just other regulators at conferences, adopting PREA with something less than what it's intended is really not solving any problems. It's not addressing the lack of availability of training. It's not addressing the areas that are underserved or the communities or people that are underserved. If you stick that supervisor process in the middle, you're still creating the same issue, and we're still back to, I've got to find a supervisor now. I technically have all the experience, but I can't move forward. So it's kind of an either or situation. I guess we've talked about it in the past, Oregon does have the ability to add criteria on top of PREA and say, okay, if you do PREA, then that works here, but also this. Again, we're back to that doesn't necessarily solve the problem it's intended to solve. So you as board members have a lot of latitude in terms of what's available to you, but in terms of how to solve the problem, what PREA is intended for, I don't know of a ton of states that are doing it. It's either kind of they're adopting it or they're not. There might be a state or two out there that's implemented like an audit or an experience verification process at the end of PREA, but based on conversations that I've had with the people developing it and other regulators, That's what PREA does. It's that experience process. Either when we're auditing an appraiser, what we're doing is satisfying the AQB requirement that the experience must be USPAP compliant and verified through, I forget the exact language of it, but essentially we have to verify that the appraisal work that under question is USPAP compliant before we can approve that person to take the test. That whole front end process is what PREA is. So it essentially eliminates the need for that audit, because if they've completed PREA, they've completed, and Scott can correct me if I'm wrong, but at least 3 appraisals of that, whatever license category they're talking about. And then if you go for the certified residential, that's an additional module with additional work that's specific to that category. So it may not be 80 appraisals a year or 150 appraisals or however many, right, you would take during the course of a normal trainee apprenticeship process. But the hands-on mentoring, as I understand it, is effective. And you don't move through the module to the next thing until the mentor feels you're ready. And they're not paid to move people through fast. So, right,
yeah, same in terms of reciprocity too. So I mean, so what it is there, it'd be difficult if like Washington didn't quite meet the terms of Oregon and somebody's looking for a reciprocity.
In terms of the initial licensing process, yeah, that does create some minor conflict, but the bottom line is that as of right now, there are different licensing criteria in different states.
Right.
Oregon for a long time was to be certified to be state licensed, it was 1,500 hours in 12 months or more, right? Certified residential was 2,000 hours in 18 months or more. That's when I got credentialed, it was that. Since June, we've rolled that back to be in line with the AQB. Well, while we were licensing appraisers and issuing reciprocals for the last 33 years, we have had different criteria than the other states, but overall, they meet the AQB criteria, we meet the AQB criteria, so we can say that they're equivalent, even if there are a couple of differences here and there, like some states renew on an annual basis and are required to take USPAP every 2 years, but submit education every year. All of those little minutia things is less concerning than, are they competent at a national standard? Do they fit these criteria that we all live by? Above and beyond is great, but do we meet that minimum criteria? Because that's essentially what PREA is supposed to do. It's not creating experts. None of us are experts when we leave our training. We're still wet behind the ears, and I recommend people, unless they've been an appraiser for 5 years as a trainee, don't just run out right away and start your own business. That's a small piece of the appraisal process, right? But that PREA program, this is where people, I think, are maybe having trouble wrapping their head around it. You're not going to become an expert with PREA. You are going to get the basic minimum skills and meet the criteria to take the test, and then prove yourself and obtain competency in A-frame log cabins and forest leased land and all of that other weird stuff that you're not. Right, that wouldn't be a part of our normal training anyway, generally speaking. If you're in an urban area or a suburban market, you don't see a lot of that weird stuff, but we eventually have to become competent in it somehow. Right. So it's the same point of view, right? It's not creating experts, it's creating competent appraisers with, personally, I think the added benefit of a standardized front end of knowledge, right? Before we're out, because I think all of us in the room that are appraisers can confidently say none of us were trained the same way, right? And that's concerning from the public's level. If you get 5 appraisers writing 5 reports on your house and they're all different and they all read differently and there's different language, we can all, technically all 5 of us can be correct. But the customer, the end user, the borrower does not know that. So the confidence, how many positive conversations have you had with people about appraisers before you've told them who you are, right? That's a test. And that's the public image that needs to change. Yeah. And some of it is warranted, some of it is not. But the lack of information creates a vacuum, which creates fear, which creates assumptions. So more information is better. More exposure to the public is better.
Hey, Chad, I have a couple of questions here.
Sure.
My question number 1 is, when we originally started talking about PREA, you said we could adopt portions of it. And am I hearing you say right now that we cannot adopt portions of it? We are all or nothing. Is that what you just said?
So the answer to that is essentially no. The board can adopt or not adopt whatever you feel like writing into rules. as long as it meets the minimum AQB criteria, you're not going to affect the ability of Oregon appraisers to do federally related transactions. The larger question here is, why are we adopting PREA? What is it intended to do? And is the way that the board is adopting it satisfying that goal, right? So, for example, it is reasonable, possible that the board could adopt PREA or propose to adopt PREA and expose the rulemaking process, begin this exposure process, and somewhere along the line decide that based on public input or something else, okay, we're going to adopt PREA, but we also want this other end step. That is a thing that the board can do. It's not happening very commonly, state to state, but it's not, there's nothing that says you can't do that. It's just after thinking about it and after talking it over, a lot of the states that were considering doing that have gone the other direction and rethought it and thought, you know what, this doesn't solve a problem. It just adds another layer of bureaucracy to the appraisal profession. We haven't solved any problems. We've just created another path that still doesn't go the same place we want it to. So
Okay.
that's so
Okay.
it is. So that's not a no. It is within the board's authority to do a lot of those things that are separate from PREA or in addition to. The question I would urge you guys to ask yourselves is why. Other than we haven't seen it, you know, none of us have gone through it. Beyond that, what's the reasoning for exceeding the criteria? Because this is also another national conversation that very likely states will have to participate in at the regulatory level with the ASC. Is we do all have the ability to add criteria to the minimum basic AQB criteria, but the larger conversation being, okay, fine, but why? Are we gatekeeping?
Right. Okay, I got what you're trying to say. You answered my question. So my next question is, what I'm hearing you say is we're not adopting it, we're exposing it, correct? So this is the portion of the process, because I haven't been involved in this process. This is the portion of the process where we're going to start informing appraisers who don't know anything about PREA and have never heard of it. And there are plenty out there that we're proposing to change the rules to accept PREA into existence in Oregon. Is that correct?
That would be correct, yeah. And then there's going to be a public hearing process and exposure and comment period and all of that stuff for transparency's sake, yeah.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. Thank you.
I had a comment or question about it myself. I was doing some research and Chad, you brought up why. Why are we exposing PREA? Why are we doing this? What is the actual purpose behind it? And try and look at the benefits, the positives and negatives. And I think for the last couple of years, as this has come up, I think I've talked about it. I'm still trying to understand what it is. And so I was looking, and yes, we did reduce our thing down to 6 months and 1,000 hours for a license. So, having had now, I think 8 trainees over the last 7 years, of which 7 I've tested and gone on to be licensed or certified. 1 more waiting to go ahead and take his test. But with that being said, I filled out many logs, complex and non-complex, multifamilies, and the hours and how that all works out. So I was doing some math last night, and I was trying to think, all right, you got a licensed appraiser that's has a choice to go through the traditional model. You have a licensed appraiser that might have the choice to do PREA. And at that point, when you're looking at a log, and let's pretend that there's a supervisor out there, so that's not a hammering point. You can get one or the other. With the supervisor, non-complex appraisals, you'd have to do 125 of those to meet roughly the 1,000 hours. If we want to call them complex, you would have to do 63. Now, what I was reading in the PREA rules that we're looking at talking about exposing to the public, the AQB minimum standard is 3 appraisals, of which need to be varying of what they are. That's the way I read that. So I said, okay, let's take a license that has to take 3. We'll do 1 single family complex, 1 multifamily, and 1 land, because that's kind of the only thing I could think of is 3. And that's 45 total hours, or 3 appraisals. So we're looking at exposing something that we as a state say 1,000 hours, and we're going to say, no, it's 45 hours, or 3 appraisals versus anywhere from 125 on the high side to 63 on the low side. And so I'm trying to tell myself, I'm trying to wrap my mind around why we're doing that if we don't have anything in there. And I do understand if you don't have a supervisor, I understand as far as the difficulty there, but I'm trying to wrap my mind around, and I also did some research on how is it that anybody else can get a license that has to be out in the field or has to do something hands-on, like an electrician, like a surgeon, like a nurse, something like that. And can they get a job or get fully trained online? And
I can give you some input.
I found a couple myself. A personal trainer, you can find one of those also, and also a realtor. So a realtor was one of those. So
Ocular surgeons.
Ocular
They
surgeons.
have VR training now. So it's, if we're talking about an issue with the technology, that's the curve that's explosive. And it's just a tool to deliver the information. So you can do that through the McKissick model of click through, things. You can put goggles on and virtually walk through a house. The method of delivery is less concerning than I think what I'm hearing for people is, A, why are we doing this, and B, what's it going to do to the profession, right? Well, where we're at today is the entirety of the supervisory appraiser training model. And as you'll hear later on, Oregon has a number of compliance cases that have resulted directly from supervisor training or lack thereof. So that being a larger problem that I'm seeing from the inside, I'm not seeing a whole lot of downside to standardizing that front-end process, because what we're doing, you're the exception to the rule, to be quite honest with you. What most appraiser supervisors are doing out there is getting endorsed by us, and it feels like blowing through the training of USPAP and what does record keeping mean? What is a work file for? Those are by and large the primary issues we see here, and those were created by supervisors. So that's in terms of weighing one versus the other, good versus bad. Just consider that. In the process.
These are just comments or concerns, pluses and minuses on both. I think it's a great avenue. From what I've understood, is there only, at this point, only one company that's going to be offering Korea?
As of right now, I believe that's correct.
Is there a syllabus or anything out now that has like the minimum appraisals that are done in that class, in that course? Is it more than 3?
I don't know. And in fact, if you wanted to ask if Scott is attending toward the end of the meeting, there's a general discussion section there. Ordinarily,
Hey, I didn't hear what you said. Did you just ask if the Appraisal Institute is the only one that offers PREA right now? Is that what you asked?
I didn't ask specifically if it was that. I said, is there any other, do we know the number of providers?
Yeah, how many providers are out there right now, Chad? Do you know?
as of right now, it's one.
One.
I think that's probably going to change here in the near future, but as of right now, I believe it's one.
Okay.
Institute.
I didn't know if we wanted to say names or not.
Yeah.
I have a question. I don't know if you guys are done with that discussion, but I wanted to put a question on the table about this. Chad, we talked a little bit that PREA has been adopted in some other states. As part of the exposure process, are we going to be able to get data about how it's working in other states? Is that something that is going to be made available so we can actually see if this brand new program is working? I feel like we have a kind of a unique opportunity here to view other states as guinea pigs a little bit. I would like to see, because it's so new, I would like to see if it actually is working favorably before we drop it in our own state. And if there is any data, if anybody's observing this and observing the new outcome, to see if that's something that we can review as part of this process.
I second that, Tapuni. I think that's a great idea.
I'd be happy to reach out to other administrators, executive directors in other states and just kind of get their impressions of, now that you've implemented it, how is it going? I'd be happy to do that.
Because
I'm sorry, there's no button to raise hands here. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interject, but can I add a couple of things?
Please do.
Okay, so and Scott DiBiasio, I believe, is on the call, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. I do not believe that anybody has actually completed the PREA program as of yet. It's an incredibly rigorous program that is taking, I think I heard it's taking about a year for most of these folks to get through. Like I say, it's very, very rigorous. And currently there is only one provider, but there are others that are working on it. It's just a really big, massive project to put
Hey,
together
Lori,
this
have you
program.
taken the course that you know that how rigorous it is? Have you taken the course?
PREA? No, absolutely
Oh, I
not.
was
I have
just
not
wondering.
taken the PREA course. No,
Yeah.
just in talking with the folks that have put the course together and talking to folks that are in the process of taking the course. And like I say, nobody has gotten all the way through it yet. So no, there is no data on how it's working. But in my opinion, I don't think that we should be waiting around to see how other states are reacting. We don't really, well, we do have
Why
that
not?
kind of time, but we
Lori,
shouldn't have that. Huh?
with respect, why not?
Because we are under such pressure right now to demonstrate that we are doing everything that we can to reduce barriers to entry into this profession.
Yes, and I agree with that. But
That's
if
what.
our motivation is of, for instance, this board is to uphold public trust,
Mhm.
that part of that is to be a little bit cautious about things. Maybe I'm being risk averse here on behalf of the board, but wanting to, understanding this is a new thing, having faith that it is a rigorous process, having faith that, and I've taken a bunch of classes with the Appraisal Institute. I think it's awesome and very rigorous, but it isn't our main job to tell people that we're working hard for them. It's our main job to uphold public trust. And with that in mind, I'm just saying I would like to see some data. That's it. And it's not a deal breaker for me. I'm just saying I would really like to see it. I really would. Because if it doesn't work, it comes back to us as being who fell down on the job again. So like I said, I'm just being risk averse on the part of the board. And I'm happy for it to go forward. But when that data is available, I would be curious to see how it's working out.
I feel like that's a theme from everybody that's on the TV screen and in here, which is we want to look at this and move forward, but is there a way to look at it? And if we see adding any more onto the minimum as we go through this process? Chad, I think that's the thought. Okay. I think that's what I'm kind of reading between the tea leaves there.
Yeah. Well, I think we can always make changes going forward.
This is, again, this is just a proposal to expose the rulemaking process to the public.
Yeah.
And then that's exactly it. I mean, I think that we're going to get a lot more information and data if we expose it to the public for comment.
I don't think anybody's saying don't expose it. I think that we're saying we should be cautious about just accepting this in whole without taking a look at everything. And I agree with Annie. I'd like to see some data from some other states to see what's going on in other states. I don't think anybody on this board can say this is a rigorous program if nobody's been through it. And I'm cautious with this as well to not just blow through this, accept it for what it is, and then we get into trouble. And while I hear people saying we can always make changes in the future, it's harder to make changes. It's easier to go through and be cautious when you're walking into it.
I'm not sure what the data from other states would look like. I mean, how would you measure something like that? If PREA is working on.
Well, I think it goes back to Lori's point that nobody's gone through it yet. But I guess what I was picturing was, do people who go through PREA end up in the discipline process? Do they screw up? Because that's really going to be what we hear about, if there's anything. And that would be
Realistically, that's 2 to 5 years down the road before we'll know any of that
could be.
data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just hoping that if somebody, if I know it's a really new program, but if, if there was any data that was starting to emerge, I really was thinking we should consider everything that's available to us as we go forward.
Chad, are you hearing from other sources like McKissick or anybody else that's prepping up this course? Because it kind of seems like Appraisal Institute will have a monopoly on this. Have you heard? Are they in the process of putting it together?
Well, I think monopoly versus first to market really is all that's happening here. I know that at one point McKissick was developing the program. I believe Option is still working on it. I don't know of a number of providers that are working on it, but I believe there's at least one other. And McKissick may have put it on hold from their end, not for any reason other than monetary cost to develop. That really could be what it is.
Yeah.
But I don't have a crystal ball, and I haven't talked to anybody at McKissick about that.
Okay.
Any further discussion before we proceed on this? Well, thank you all for your input. That's good information.
So I move that we approve of filing a notice of proposed rulemaking to adopt the rules for PREA.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. And we're into old business and.
Nope, not quite.
Oh,
Third bullet point down there. The grant.
oh, I see. 2024 Appraisal Subcommittee Grant. Well, this is something we've been looking forward to for some time. Chad, can you tell us about this?
Sure. So when our friends at the AAC were here last, they were really helpful, really kind, and gave me a little bit of insight into the fact that they're going to have grant money available in 2024. It's essentially a 3-year period is the time period these grants are given out on to states that need help with whatever it is that they're looking to either build a new licensing platform or onboard new staff. The Appraisal Subcommittee grant is for state regulatory agencies to assist in their regulatory operations. And as we all know, Oregon has had a long-standing, and it predates me, by the way, long-standing compliance backlog. Whether that's because of the nature of Oregon's users of appraisal services or our appraisers or a combination of both, we have more cases right now than we can reasonably close in the time period that the Appraisal Subcommittee sets as far as the expectation. In order to deal with that, they have actually made grant money available. And there are a lot of states that are in this boat for a number of reasons. But one of the ways that the subcommittee is combating that is making this grant money available to states to use as they see fit for onboarding new compliance help, for contract investigative services, for front-end office stuff, to build licensing platforms that are more efficient and cloud-based. So essentially, that would be what we're talking about. Is I wanted to bring this before the board before we went ahead and applied for anything, because it is a budgetary decision, it is a board decision, and it should be transparent and stuff. So I wanted to make you guys aware that that is a thing. The deadline is June, I believe it's either 1st or 6th. So it's coming up very shortly here. So if we were going to apply for it, it would be before our next board meeting. So I wanted to bring it before you folks so that you could tell me whether or not to go through with that, essentially.
What is the amount of the grant?
I don't know that there's a set amount per state. I believe there's an amount that 120 a year for 3 years. I think it's on an as-needed basis, but I believe the grant itself that they make available that you can apply for is 120 a year, and it's a 3-year period, so a total of 360. Thank you.
That could go a long ways toward catching up.
Yeah, it very well could.
Is any work being done on that right now in the
Yes.
application process?
We're doing a lot of that front end stuff right now in preparation to apply, but I wanted to bring it again before we get too much further into that application process and spending more time on it. I wanted to make sure that that is something the board wants us as a staff to go ahead and do and apply for.
Do we need to make a motion for that?
I would.
So moved.
Second,
All right.
let's get that money.
Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. That's good news. So now we're on to the old business, budget report with Paul.
At this point in time, still being early, budget numbers are there, our income's a little slower than we want. Expenses, that's one thing we can control in this office, and we are trying different items to do so. You'll hear Chad about a big one that we're looking at maybe doing. We're doing anything we can to keep an eye on our expenses down because of our income. Because last round of budget time, it was low. I'm just a little worried how much we're bringing in right now. But overall, I still think we're going to be safe. We're not touching our reserve. We're still keeping our balance higher than it ever was before I joined. So we're still got 6 months of running without any issues.
That's good.
No one else has any questions. I'm okay. I don't know if Eric has anything to add.
No, it looks pretty good to me.
Good. We're still in the blue.
Yep.
Okay, licensing report, Chad, please.
Yes, sir. So these numbers are as of March 31st, 2024. That's the end of the last quarter. And then just point of order here on the reference materials, it says March 31st, 2023. We're not reporting on last year, we're reporting on this year. So it's March 31st, 2024 are the numbers that I'm reporting right now. As of March 31st, and this again kind of dovetails into the budget conversation, and you'll see why income may be a little slower or lower than anticipated. As of March 31st of this year, we had 602 active certified general appraisers, 628 certified residential appraisers, and 140 state licensed appraisers for a total of 1370. Now that number is down from this time last year, which was 1410. Those small incremental decreases is what we're looking at. That's one of the issues facing the board right now is the decline in the population. Part of it probably is due to the market. Part of it may be due to the fact that we don't have as many supervisors taking on assistants. There are less assistants interested maybe in working with supervisors. Just a function of the market being slower means that there are less appraisers renewing, less people getting into the business. So those numbers are slightly declining. We do have new blood coming in, but it's not quite at the rate that the rest of us are exiting the profession. Let's see, as of March 31st, we had 20 inactive certified general appraisers, 24 inactive certified residential appraisers, and 14 inactive state licensed appraisers, 58 inactive licensees. Now these are folks that are renewing, like myself, renewing inactive. They're not allowed to practice, but they're maintaining their credentials and they're continuing ed and their USPAP compliance and all that. As of March 31st, we had 71 currently registered appraiser assistants that are working toward one phase of licensure or another. So the supervising appraiser program is still operating. There are 71 assistants out there. As of March 31st, we had 101 registered AMCs. Now, if you look at both of those numbers, not that they're related, but the appraiser assistants and registered AMCs, both of those numbers have kind of shown that slight decline, incremental decrease, kind of almost at the same pace as the licensing numbers, like above. Just a little bit different every year, not drastically so, but the numbers are getting smaller. So we did have our annual reports in from the AMCs. March 31st was the deadline. As of the date this report was run, we were still collating the covered transaction amounts and things like that. So it doesn't appear in this board meeting packet, but it will in the July. So we're on track with getting those AMCs to file their annual reports this year at a much more successful rate than previous.
Sorry, the covered transactions, so there's appraisals.
Yes. Yes, those are appraisals of
21 and 22.
Yeah, yeah, that's a massive, well, and that corresponds with that rate explosion, right? That 113,000 in 21 to 47,495 in 2022. That, I mean, when rates double, that's half volume. That makes, I mean, that's probably what you're looking at, that difference, probably the refinances, if I had to guess. Yeah. That pretty well covers the licensing report, unless there are any questions. In particular, how are the callers or the virtual attendees hearing me okay?
Yes. Okay, on to our enforcement report.
All right, and now these numbers are a little bit more current. I ran these a little more recently than the licensing numbers, than Paul ran the licensing numbers. These are developed as of essentially when this board meeting, well, it's reported as of today, but I ran this last Monday. So as of last Monday, we had 102 total open cases for the board. Last quarter, we closed 17 cases, which is a somewhat higher number than we've seen previous. As of right now, or as of the 15th this month, we had 0 appraisal management company compliance cases. Those have all been dealt with. We have, of the 102 appraiser cases, we have 3 that we're currently waiting for a response from the appraiser. The investigators have indicated that we do need to look forward, look into the issues a little bit more, and now we're waiting for the appraiser to respond to the allegations. 5 of our 102 cases are currently under investigation, active investigation assigned to an investigator. 90 are in that pending status, waiting to be assigned to an investigator. And 4 are before you folks today for approval, so that they would be essentially at the end of this board meeting closed as of today. As of last Monday, we had 76 cases that were over that 1-year mark, which is the appraisal subcommittee's guideline or standard for case closure rates. 68 of those are waiting to be assigned to an investigator. All 5 of our current investigations are of those older cases. So we've put all of the board's investigative resources at those older cases right now, unless something drastic comes up that needs immediate attention that relates to fraud, ethics rule violations, immediate harm to the public, things like that we have to prioritize. But aside from those things, that's where the investigators are focusing all their time, is on these aged cases to move them through the process and get some resolutions, both for the public as well as the appraisers involved, to be honest. And of the orders before you for approval today, 3 of the 4 of the cases, I should say, before the board for approval, 3 of the 4 are over that 1-year mark. So again, that's kind of a demonstration that that's where we're focusing most of our efforts compliance-wise. That pretty well covers that, unless there are any questions.
Okay, hearing no questions, we will move on to the approval of the board orders. And the first one we have up for us, should we do these 3 individually?
I would, yeah. They are part of one agreement. They're 3 separate cases. Okay. You could call out the individual case numbers and ask for a vote on the 3.
Okay, so the first case we're looking at is case number 20-2458, and it's recommended for education and counseling. Do we have any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Rick,
Yes.
Brian, Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next case is number 2469, education and counseling. Again, any discussion on that? Have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next case is number 21-2480, education and counsel. Again, motion to approve or any discussion?
Move that we approve.
I'll second.
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, the final case is number 23-2598, and the recommendation or action is education. Any discussion or a motion to approve?
Move that we approve.
I'll second.
Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes, and that's the end of the board orders. Now we're down to the administrator's report.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, this is what Paul was talking about earlier. This process, in terms of looking at the way that the state uses its space, how much space does it own, we're a semi-independent board, so we're kind of separate from the rest of the executive branch's processes in terms of, owned by the state and occupied by agencies, those kinds of buildings. But there has been a release of a document that's essentially space usage guidelines from the state. A lot of these conversations started happening because of COVID, because of our shift back to entirely, well, not back to, our shift to entirely remote work for, well, it was about a year and a half. I'm going to go ahead and wait. There's a leaf blower outside, folks. I'm going to let them handle their business. Okay, so this conversation among state agencies and the executive branch started happening because of COVID, because all of us ended up working remotely from our homes for such a long period of time. We discovered that not only do we not need as much space as we have, but we can occupy it differently and use it differently than we have been. So the culture of office organization is kind of changing a little bit. Here at the board, we've gone to a structure of we've got staff in 4 or 5 days a week, and if you want to make an appointment and come see me on a Friday, that we're open on Fridays as well. But generally speaking, we rotate staff through, so we don't have all the staff in the building at the same day because it's really not necessary. We still maintain a presence for walk-in traffic, but we don't need X amount of square feet with 5 separate offices that are only occupied 1 day a week. We could downsize theoretically and save the board some money here, especially in light of the changes and the slowing down of the revenues and licensing populations. This is an opportune time probably to take a look at that and at least start the conversation with the current property manager of what are our options here if we were to move. And again, because that wasn't a budget item that you all approved the last budget cycle, I wanted to bring it before you folks today before we have any of those conversations or start down that road. I wanted to make sure that is something the board wants to do, is look at how we're using our space, what are our options for our current space, should we move to a different space, just at least starting those conversations so that when we do have another budget in 2025, that will be something that we fleshed out and go ahead and approve that.
So if I understand you right, you want approval to apply for money and also approval to save us money.
To save something, yes, correct.
Okay.
Our contract's coming up. We signed a 10-year contract.
All
We
right.
got a good deal.
Yes.
We've been here. Well, we ain't gonna have a good deal next time, I bet. So I want to start looking at if we shrink, if we want to. If we don't, do we want to move? Things that we got to start looking at.
Yeah.
Affording to move is gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
It's way expensive. We did get here. If we can shrink or move in this place, maybe this is a deal. I don't know. That's what I want to start working with them, discuss, to see save us. Because I'm worried our rent's gonna triple.
Well, I'll motion.
Have the conversation. And at this point, there's no board decision. I just wanted to the conversation I'm going to start having so that I do have something to bring to you for an actual decision at some point here in the future. Just be aware of the fact that that's part of the conversations we're having, kind of preparing for the 2025 budget planning session. The next thing up, I just wanted to give you a brief update, and this relates back to essentially a lot of the overarching themes in the profession, at least at the national level right now. What is the diversity of the profession? Where are we concentrated? What markets are we serving? What markets are underserved? In developing our the board's stance on the diversity of the profession and what are we doing to change that or increase the diversity of the perspectives that are in our profession. If we're appraising in a population, that population should have a say, right? Or at least that perspective is important. So matching up the diversity or the demographics of our profession with that of the population it serves, I see nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing bad that can happen from that. That's positive. So essentially what we've been doing in crafting our mission here is we wanted to reach out to licensees, and those of you in the room that are and on the virtual meeting here that are licensees likely got an email from Stephanie. You'll likely get another one. What we're doing is we're sending these out in kind of batches, and we're leaving some chunk of time in between because I know how annoying those repetitive emails can get, but we still do need that data. In order to know who we are and where we want to go, we need to figure those things out now, number-wise, so that we can craft a plan to change if change is needed. So essentially, this update is just that we've started that demographic survey. We've gotten some responses. I don't believe we've gotten responses from every licensee. We probably won't get responses from every licensee. What we're looking for is a statistically significant, meaningful data sample that we can say we have X number of licensees, 70% responded. Of the 70% that responded, here is what has been reported, right? That will give us an accurate picture of who we are. And I feel like moving forward, that's kind of an important thing. So essentially,
Hey, Chad,
yeah.
do those responses become public information?
We haven't made anything public other than the numbers that we'll make public. But as far as your demographics
So
information,
if anybody had comments or anything like that, those don't become public?
Comments such as?
On the form.
Oh, no, that the form is just like we wouldn't hand out your licensing renewal application. It's the same kind of information.
Okay.
We're not going to be making that published information. We will publish the numbers overall, but as far as individual responses, we're not naming names, and we're not. Yeah, I don't think that would be at all appropriate.
Thank you.
Is there gender identification?
I believe that might be one of the questions on the survey. No, that's a no.
Yeah, that could be iffy.
I mean, it's it's a question, but yeah. How many people want to answer that question? And again, these surveys are not mandatory. They're optional. We're asking for the information. Nobody's obligated to provide it to us, but providing it to us helps us do our jobs. Right. Is really what it comes down to. And that's essentially my update on the demographic survey. Tune in next time for some more information. We may actually have a report together with some meaningful numbers that I can present in a coherent format so that we all know who we are and where we're at in our July meeting, possibly.
Okay, well, we're open up for general discussion. If anybody would like to bring anything up or have any summary discussion at this meeting.
I have a thought. There's a new program going around, or at least newly that I have found about, where you can go and you're hired by AMC to film houses.
Property data collector.
Yeah, property data collectors. And so I'm starting to hear a little bit more about that, starting to hear some information. I was kind of reading into it, going, oh, what's this all about? And there is a part in there, I guess you could say a dark side, that's a lot of some of the realtors and homeowners are thinking that the data collectors are appraisers. I know that's not anything we can do.
Case of mistaken.
It was just something that it's, I think, a newer program with the virtual and the phones on the tripods and stuff like that. Just something I saw out there.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that if somebody shows up to the house and says, I'm here to gather data for an appraisal, a homeowner that doesn't know anything about the PDC process or the changes that have gone into the hybrid appraisal process, they would make that assumption that, okay, that's my appraiser, or they work for the appraiser or something, right? But again, we can't regulate misconceptions. All we can do is say, you can't say you're an appraiser unless, and then enforce that rule. So yeah, but that's good information to have, to be aware of on the horizon.
Scott, I'm just curious if you have anything to say about how PREA's coming along in other states or as a whole.
Sure, I'm happy to chime in here, and I apologize. I am trying to multitask and listen to a hearing on appraisal bias in the state of New Jersey. So if it appears as if I'm about to blow a gasket, that is probably why. Um, in terms of Perea, AI Perea was launched in the marketplace back in September of 2023. We currently have over 150 people enrolled in the program. Like Lori said, it is a very rigorous program. People are actually finding it a lot more difficult than they were expecting. And we are hoping to have our first cohort of graduates from the LR module of AI Perea within the coming days, actually. There are 2 folks that are on their final assignment. And once those are graded and accepted, they will get their certificate of completion and be authorized in whatever state it is they intend on becoming licensed to sit for the examination. And I really think, their ability to pass the examination, hopefully on the first attempt, will really be the proof in the pudding that the AI Perea program is rigorous and is developing competent and qualified residential real estate appraisers. We have 5 mentors now on staff, and there's about 25 or 30 folks assigned to each of those mentors. And we actually had to pause enrollment for a short period of time because our mentors were being overworked because of the program is so rigorous. They're having to spend a lot more time than we anticipated with each of the participants. And some of our mentors were working 80, 90 hours a week to be able to serve the participants that they have been assigned. So overall, the program's going really well. We're going to open enrollment back up, I think, on May the 5th or somewhere thereabouts. And we'll have the capacity to take on probably another 70 or so people right away. We have over 1,600 people that have started what we refer to as a readiness checklist. And that's where we verify all of their qualifying education. We ensure that they can ultimately pass a background check. And there's some other things that they have to satisfy as well. And once they have completed that readiness checklist, then they are authorized to enter into the Perea program. One interesting thing that we're finding is that people don't understand that they have to have all of their qualifying education, meaning all 150 or all 200 hours of qualifying education completed before they can enter into the Perea program. And a sizable portion of the 1,600 people that have started that readiness checklist have had to step back and go and complete the additional 75 or 150 hours to enter into Perea. And we're pretty confident that those folks will ultimately be converted into participants in the Perea program. So, like I said, overall, it's going very, very well. Of course, there are challenges in any new program, and we've had to address those challenges and try to overcome them. And I think that we have done that. And I'm fairly confident, actually very confident, that the quality of the appraiser that you get having completed their experience via Perea is going to actually be better than the many appraisers that you get through the supervisor trainee relationship. So in terms of having statistics to be able to present to you all, we will have that information as folks go through the program, complete the program, and actually sit for the exams. So I'm more than happy to answer any other additional questions in relation to Perea if members of the board have them.
How do you become a mentor?
Very good question. The AQB has established the minimum qualifications to become a mentor, and you have to have been a certified residential appraiser for a certain period of time. I can't remember exactly what that is. And in terms of AI Perea, Our mentors are all designated members of the Appraisal Institute. They're all very, very seasoned appraisers, having been working in the field themselves for many, many years, and having decided to take a little bit of a different tact and get into serving as mentors and training the future of the profession. So very, very seasoned and dedicated and well-versed and very, very qualified folks that are serving as mentors in the AI PREA program.
Thanks, Scott.
Any further general discussion?
Thank you, Justin.
I just wanted to thank Chad so much for all of his work on those rules, man. I don't know how many late nights you must have put in. So thank you for the work you do for this board.
Scott, I have a quick question for you related to PREA. Do you know how many states have adopted at this point?
Sure. There are 48 out of the 55 jurisdictions that have indicated acceptance of PREA, and Oregon is included in that number based upon the vote that was taken at a previous meeting to move forward with the development of the regulations and now actually the formal promulgation of those regulations. There are 35 states that we consider to be PREA ready, meaning that they have all of the rules, regulations, and policies in place in order for somebody to go to that agency and present a certificate of completion and be authorized to sit for the exam. Once Oregon goes through the rulemaking process, you'll be added to that list of PREA-ready states. But 48, the only two remaining jurisdictions that are still on the fence and waffling about PREA are Georgia and New York. And I'm very confident that within the next couple of months, they will also indicate the willingness to accept PREA. I'm actually going to be up in Albany next week to meet with the New York State Appraisal Board. Hopefully I'll have some good news to report after that. And similarly with Georgia later in the month. Yeah, 48 out of the 55 jurisdictions will accept PREA eventually. 35 are ready to do so right now.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Chad, and I guess for the board, I can also point out the Appraisal Foundation has a nice map indicating where each state is or jurisdiction. If everybody wants to take a look at that, you could just Google PREA and it'll bring up the map.
And that map is actually developed based on data that's fed to them by the AI. So just wanted to note that.
Okay.
Oh, I think Justin has a hand.
So my final act as chairperson.
Wait, Rick, I think Justin has a hand up. This actually isn't the public input section of the meeting, but if you wanted to recognize it for a brief statement, you could. Justin Moriarty, lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, Jeff, you have something Justin, you have something to add?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. I definitely want to point out to you that not every supervisor is created equal, and every appraiser coming into the industry has to face that hurdle of trying to find a very qualified one, and you're only as good as that trainer, right? And I know that while there's a lot of appraisers out there who feel like they're doing the best job that they possibly can, they are shocked when they find out that maybe they're not meeting that bar. And I think that having to learn about those things on the back side of stuff is very it's hard, and it's discouraging. And that's why I think having a form of standardization is a huge step forward in the right direction. At least being very transparent with the public and with people coming in where that bar needs to be. And then we can all kind of rate, either some people maybe need to raise to it, some other people need to recognize where it is, and then the industry can very much it'll be a lot more uniformed. And I think that will also reduce the barrier of entry as well, because there are some people who go, how do you know if you're attempting to find a supervisor that's qualified? You know, maybe they're approved to do it in the state or something, but how do you know that they're going to give you that right training, right? And then also this is a way that maybe in the future there won't be as much of a supervisor trainee relationship in the way that we understand it now. Maybe it will be more in a academic setting, and something like that. So therefore, it would be a more streamlined entry process to the industry. And I'm not saying that it should reduce the time period that necessary, but I think it can raise the quality standard and allow people who should be in the profession to that opportunity. And I think that's what I needed to say there. Thanks.
Well put, Justin.
Yeah, I would, if I could just respond to Justin, so many of the things you say ring true to me. Having done some reviews of disciplinary case with Chad, and finding that, you have sometimes a trainee who doesn't get a good supervisor, and they do exactly what you were saying, which is they find out on the back end that they weren't getting the right training, even though they were super earnest and they were doing exactly what they thought they were supposed to be doing. And then they find out that they're, like I was telling Chad, and I've said this a million times, garbage in, garbage out. So I totally hear you on that. And I will just say, this is just a general comment. As a former professor, academic myself, I think that I don't want it to sound like I'm anti-Pyrea. I'm totally not. I'm just cautious. And I think that taking our training into an academic model more is probably the right direction, for sure. Just kind of what you're saying. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Andy.
I know you're getting ready to close it up. I didn't know if this is appropriate time for the EOC or anything.
Oh, we do have a couple of EOC members that'll be leaving us here. That leaves Jeff as the only permanently appointed. So alternates, we do have 2 alternates, I believe, yes. I think we probably need some nominations for the EOC to replace you, Rick, and you, Brian, because we will have one of those here in just a couple of weeks.
So.
I would like to nominate Julie.
I can second that.
No. I've got too much stuff on my plate right now, you guys.
All right, so who do we have? We need 3. So Lori, you're on there, right? Can we nominate Lori? And, okay.
Is that a nomination?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Lori.
I'll second. She's not saying no.
That would require.
Okay, Rick,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
No.
and Annie.
Yes. I don't know if Lori wants me to say
Thanks
yes
a
or
lot,
not.
Annie.
Well, so that's 2 now. We have
That passes.
we have one other current sitting appraiser that will be here after today in this board meeting.
And
It would be Annie, would be the other person. So.
I would like to nominate Annie. Thank you very much.
Hey, I'll second that.
Okay, Rick,
Oh, yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Oh, yeah.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Heck yeah.
Annie.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So just real quick, Lori and Annie, that's literally how I got this job. So welcome to the club. I don't want it. No, you're doing it. Okay.
Okay. So does that mean Brian and I are
Are off
PRC
the-
now?
Other than we're still on the record, guys, I would like to personally thank both of you for all of the time you've given this board. Are you both full 8 years?
Yeah, we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you from the bottom of my heart. For the 5 years that I've been here, you've made my life. I know that this has been at times a headache, and I appreciate you putting up with migraines.
You're welcome. Yeah, I want to thank everybody too, the staff and you, Chad, and it's been a pleasure the whole time. And I didn't know Julie or Annie beforehand, but with Lori coming in, she's like one of the leading experts in the country, not just the state. So it's I feel very confident about how the ACLB is going to be moving forward.
I think we're in good hands.
Yeah, definitely.
I also wanted to thank Eric. I can't forget you. You've been extremely helpful with Paul too. We really appreciate your service on the board. And thank you for all those conversations in terms of referrals and stuff moving forward. I just really appreciate your involvement with the board over the last few years.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been good, and I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Well, it's been very educational. It's been a good experience, and I'll check in every now and then.
Please do. Please do.
We have some pointed questions.
You can be on the other side of the fence now.
Yeah, public. Okay, with that said, I think we're about ready to adjourn.
We need a motion for the adjournment.
Do we have a motion?
So
to adjourn?
moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
All right, Rick,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
and Annie.
Yes.
And I see it's 10:30, and we're adjourned.
Thank you very
All
much,
right.
Rick.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.